Hello guys, and welcome to this tutorial. And in this tutorial I'll be teaching you how we can handle our async and errors. So basically how we can handle our errors in our application. Okay, so if you go to our controllers down here and the categories controllers, can we see this? So we have try and catch. So in this video I'm going to show you a best way and a cleaner way of doing this, try and catch. I'm going to show you a cleaner way of doing this, and instead of us always putting our errors like this in all our endpoints, I'm going to show you a cleaner way of doing it. Okay, so first thing first, let's test this. Let's start with our error handling. Okay, so let's go to the Postman and I go to get category ID and I try to press send. Now it's giving us no category with that ID of this, right? Okay, because this is what we're trying to do here. If there's no categories ID of that, so we're saying no category with this ID of so. And if the ID underscore, the category underscore ID is wrong, it's going to tell us cast error, right? So let's try to do something that is wrong, a wrong ID, and I press send. Now we're getting cast to object ID failed. Okay, so we can see we are doing the same thing in all our endpoints. We can't be doing that. So we're going to be using Express to undo our error for us. Okay, so what we need to do now is to say next. Now we have this argument called next here is a function, so we can pass in the error down there. So you say next and the error, right? And we hit the save button. So what we need to do now is for us to create our custom handler, our custom middleware that's going to undo our errors. Okay, so we're going to create a folder here and I'll call it middleware, right? And in the middleware we're going to create a file called error, so error.js. So in this file we're going to create our custom error handling. So what we need to do is to create a function called error handler. Then we're going to pass in the error. The error is going to come from the middleware. Don't worry, I'm going to show you that. So request, then the response, and the next then is a arrow function, right? So let's console log the error so that we know what kind of error is it first. Then say rest the status. Then say 500, right? This 500 stands for internal error, the status code for internal error, internal server error. So I'm going to pass in the JSON. So now here we'll say success and we'll say it's false, right? And the error, we're going to say error.message. Yeah, we have an object in this error. We have a property in this error called message. I'm going to pass in all the message for us. So when it save. So now the way we're going to use this in our app is to go to our app.js and we're going to require it down here. So I'll say error handler and I'll say require, then we're going to the middleware, right? And we're going to errors, the error part of Vuetify. So before you put it in part of the middleware, so it's going to be after all your routes, after all you've require all your routes, because it's not going to work. The next in this category simply means the next middleware. So this is the next middleware. Once you say next, I say once you press next. Once you say next is the next middleware. It's going to be app.use here. Then I'm going to pass in the error handler. So now this is where I'm going to pass it now. Now it's giving us an error. Required to is a function. Oh, sorry. So we have to export this. Sorry about that. Models that export and error handler, right? And we'll hit save again. Let's see if there's okay. We started successfully. Okay, so now that's that. So in the app, so we're passing it down here. So this is the reason why we need the error, this error class here. So when we pass in this error here, next.error, so it's going to get hold of it. We're going to get hold of it down here in this error argument so that we can use it and say error.message easily. Okay, so now let's test it if it's going to work. So fingers crossed, and we press next. Yep, and we're having our errors. Cast to object ID failed for the value of this. So our error is actually working fine. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is to create our own custom error response. So we're going to extend the error class from nodejs. We're going to create our own custom error response. So we're going to create a utility folder down here, util folders, call util. Then here I'm going to create error response.js, right? So you're going to say a class. It's going to be a class of error response. Going to extend the error class that we have in nodejs. Then we're going to call the constructor. Now the constructor is the method that's going to be called when we initialize our class, right? So we're going to pass in the message and the status code, and like that. So we want to call the constructor in the super class, which is this error. I want to call the constructor in the error class. So we're going to say super, then the message, right? So say this dot status code, and passing our status code, right? So we're going to export the error response. The exports, I'm going to say error response. I'm going to save it. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is we want to use our error response. We want to use it, we want to customize this using in our error handler, right? We want to use that in our error handler. So the way we're going to do that is Mongoose has this error that it throws, right? Has this error that it throws, like cast error, duplicate key, validation error, and the likes, right? So the way we're going to do this is simple. We're going to try to bring in our error handling class here. So we'll say in const the error response, right? I'm going to require, what happened right there, sorry. I'm going to require I'm going to go back in the util, then we're going to go to the error response, right? Okay, so now we have this default cast error that we do. Okay, so now let me show you that cast error. So when we try to press in the post, we're seeing this cast object failed, right? So that is from Mongoose. Mongoose is giving us that. So argument past error must be a single 12 of years. Is not a valid ID, so it's a cast error. It's not a valid object ID. So what we're going to do now, we're going to say, okay, if, so we say invalid for the invalid object ID, right? I'm going to say if the error.name is equals to the cast error, right? If it's equals to the cast error, so we want to pass in our own message. So we'll say our own message. Now we're going to say resource, if I can spell resource not found, right? So now we're going to try to do this. I don't want to like create our own kind of error here and try to pass it. So it's simple. Let's just do like let the error, right? So I'm going to use the spread operator, put in equals to, I'm going to put the spread operator here like that. So here we can, it's going to say error, sorry. So here we can easily say error and say new error response, like new error response. So now we're going to pass in the message that we're going to pass it in, and the status code for like the way we did right here in our class. Now constructor, the message and the status code. So we're passing it down here. So that's just for it. So now what we need to do now is to say, okay, the error.status, right? Status code, that's what we're going to pass there, and the message is going to be error.message. So now let's test this if it's going to work. Test it, we press send. We are having an error. And what is that error, please? Sorry. And the error is invalid status code. Oh, I'm spelling this wrong. Status. So let's try it again. Press send. Yeah, resource not found. Exactly. When we have the cast error, we're going to get resource not found. Okay, first thing we're going to comment this out first because it's going to disrupt us from doing something else. So I'm to comment this one for unique validity. You see why soon. Let's go back to our error file here. So we're going to have this duplicate field value, right? So in and when we try to create a categories here and we press send, you can see we have this duplicate key value and it's telling us the error, this code is 11100. So we're not seeing the errors down here is because in our categories.js we ain't passing it through the next middleware. So say next and the error like that, it's safe. So now let's try it again and we press the send. Now we are having that down here. We are having that. So we're saying invalid status code, but we're seeing the code here. Seeing the name is Mongo error. So we could have Mongo error, but to be specified, the Mongo error we're looking for is the code of 1100 because that is the duplicate key. So now for us to do that is simple. So down here we can say, okay, for duplicate key, right, I can say if error code now and pass in the 1000. So we can see how we're trying to do our own custom error handling, our own custom validation using mongoose. Like we're trying to do our own custom validation using mongoose. We don't need to use a third-party library for us to do this. So now I can also say the message says the duplicate field valued entered, right? So now I can say the error should be the new error response, then we're passing the message, and it should be 400. It's about the request, right? It's about the request. So yeah, we have to put in or server error if there is no error message, right, just in case. So now let's try it again and we press send. Now we're having duplicate field value enter. But do you know what? This is not actually the best way for us to do this, because if we are using our front end with our vuejs, we can't be having duplicate field value enter. What if we add like other fields that are required that we don't want it to be duplicate? We want them to be duplicate, like maybe in our user mode, we want to have username and email. So the email and the username has to be unique. So we want to know the exact field. Is it the username or is it the email? So something that we could use to tell the front end the particular value. So we can do this. So that was the reason why in our categories controllers in the past video, like the second tutorials, talk about using mongoose validation, like mongoose unique validator is a library I use. So this is it right here in the modules, right? In the modules, we try to require it here. So we're going to pass it in here. So it's going to tell us that the part already exists, the title already exists, right? The description already exists. So we see we have description, which is also required, right? But it's not unique, but this is unique. So we're using this right here. So you can go watch that video to see that. So this is what we're going to pass. We're going to pass it in the validation error. I'm coming to that. So it's saved now. So now the next thing we're going to do in our error.js now is for us to do validation error. Let me show you what's a validation error. So let's say, for instance, you know, this is required. Let me remove this and let me remove everything. Then I press send. Now we're going to have a validation error. So yeah, let's go up. So we have a validation error. Title is required. Description is required. So that's the validation error. So now we are going to create our custom this thing to handle the validation error. Okay, so the way we're going to do that to handle the validation error is we say if the error.name is equals to the validation error, right? So what we want is we want to create a const message, and now the validation error is an array. Do you understand? Is an array of the validations. Now we have description is required and the title is required, right? So now we're going to see, we want to get the values of them. So we see the object dot values, right? So now we're going to say the error dot errors that we have. Then we're going to map it. Then we're passing the error with arrow, because I'll be using this kind of, I'll be using error everywhere. So I'm just making it three arrows here. So yeah, I'm gonna put now. So what I needed them to be in an array of objects. So the field is going to have its own, and the message is going to have its own. I'm going to say, okay, the title field one, which is what's it called? Which is title. Then the message, tell us the message maybe is required or not. So let me just show you real quick. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna return. Then the field. Yeah, it's going to be error. Then the parts. Like we have the parts here. If you look at the error handler, so see the parts is description, which is required. Now we're seeing the parts here, which is title and is required. So we can see there are arrays of objects, but we need this is the errors we're trying to do here. So we're saying error.errors where we're passing it the error.errors that we're seeing here, right? The errors here. So it's kind of in an array, is an array format, comma, the title. Can we see this? So that's what we're trying to do here. So now we're going to say the message is going to be the error.message. We're passing the message like this. So that's just it. So now we're going to come down here and say the error equals to new error respond. Then we're going to say the message, and we're going to say 400, right? So let's hit the save now, and let's go back there and press send again. When we press send, now we're having objects. You do know why? Because in our error, the error response. In this, our error response is taking the message and passing it into this error class down here. And that error class down here cannot undo an array. Do you understand? Cannot undo an array. So we have to create our own custom message for us to do that. So we're going to say, I'm going to call it message field, and by default is null. So in the case we're trying to use in here, as we're using it here, a message like this, so the last value is always going to equal to null, because we don't actually need it everywhere, just for this validation error, right? And I'm going to see why soon. So in the error response down here, I also say the message field is equals to null. So now we're going to say this dot message field is equals to the message field, right? So it's saved now. So we'll go back to our error. So instead of passing it down, we are going to say this is going to be null, because I'm going to be using that. Then here's going to be the message. So down here we're going to say if we have the error.message field, message field, I had field, like message field, anyone. So pass it like this, or better, let's change it to message with field. So we'll go back to our response and change it to message with fields. For some reason, I don't know, I'm using my shortcut when I know I have it. Yeah, okay. So now let's hit the save, message is field, and let's test it again and press send. Boom, we have that. So we can see these are the errors: field, description, message, description is required, field, title. So now when we're using our front end, we can use this to get what those are required. Perfect. So we're doing that. So now let's try to bring back our stuff back. So when we press send, now we're having title already as this title. Can we see it's doing this for us? So it's not giving us the duplicate feed anymore. This is because of what we did here, this unique validator, because of that library we used. It's not giving us that unique duplicate field anymore. So I don't think this one is actually then required, but let's just leave it, just in case. Let's just leave it. Okay, so now that's for that. So let's go back to our categories.js, and let's make sure everybody's using the next error. So just in case, error, and down here I'm gonna say next error, right? So what next? Which one is the next one again? Okay, we've done for that, we've done for this, we've done for this, but we don't need anyone for this. Okay, so now we're going to use our error response. Since we have our custom error response, we can't be doing this anymore, right? We can't be doing this anymore. So yeah, we're going to say the const error response require is going to be in our middleware. Is it in our middleware? No, using the utility utils, then the error response. So now in the get categories side, yeah, so instead of doing this, we're going to say returned what was that? Return next, right? Then we'll say error response, then it's supposed to be new. Yeah, is it new error response. So yeah, we're passing our message. So you're gonna copy this, and paste. So it is 404. Is it 404? Yes, 404. the error is bad. So now I'm going to remove this, press send. So now you know that here is going to be forecast error. When this ID is invalid, it's going to come to the next one. But here now, if the ID, what did I press? If the ID is valid, then we have to check it. The ID is valid, but we can't find any of the ID in the category, so we have to check it and return and say no categories with the ID of this. Okay, so now let's try to do that again. Oh, let's remove it. No need to comment it, so clean it up. So let's go back to our categories.id and we press send. Or let's use a valid this thing. We're having server error, and while we're having the server error, we say no categories with that ID of this. Okay, so the reason why we're having that error, right? The reason why we're having this error when we press it here for server.error is because in our error class, in our error middleware, we have to pass in this, like our custom error that we have to pass it in the errors like this. We have to put it and say the message supposed to be the error like this dot message every time. So when we hit save now, so if we try it again and we press send, we're going to get no categories the ID of this. So that's why we're having that error. So let's use a valid ID now. Copy this and let's paste it down here and see if it's gonna work. Paste and press send. Perfect, we're having it. Okay, that's just it. So now what we need to do now is to go back to our categories, right? So anywhere that we have that, we're gonna copy it. Anywhere that we have that error, we have it in here. So do have it here. No, for create we don't have it. For updates we do. So paste it here. Paste and say that 4, right? So here to the same. Say 4, no, 400, 4. Oh, sorry. Supposed to paste it inside, not everything. Yes, okay, now so that's for that and everything, so it's safe. So now we're going to close all the files. Let's close all your files, right? So now we're going to create for our async handler now. So we're going to create an async handler to make our code more cleaner. So in our categories.js, we are seeing this try and cache here. We can't be doing this try and cache every time. Look for a way to make it cleaner. So we're going to have a middleware here, new file, and I'm going to call it async handler.js, right? So down here, what I need to do now is to say is an higher order function, a function within a function. So we're going to say const async handler, then is a fn. I'm going to pass in this like this. And say the request, the rest, and the next. So next thing that we need, we want to use a promise to resolve it. A promise the reserve. Then we want to pass in the fn. Then the fn will say request.res and nests. Then here I want to catch in the error. So the error now I want to pass in nests for it. So that's just it like that. So what we need to do now is to say the module.export is equals to the async handler and it's safe. So the way we're going to do this in our categories.js now is anywhere we have this async, right? So we're going to require it here, const async handler, and I'll say require, right? Require, we're going to the where the middleware, and we're going to what am I doing? Then we're going to async handler, right? So down here, how we're going to do this now is, since we have this async handler, it's going to handle our try and cache for us. So when we have the function right here, if we pass, we to resolve it. If we not pass, it goes to the cache.next, then pass this next to our middleware that we've created already. So in the categories.js, so what we're going to do now is down here, I can say the async, just pass it, wrap them like this, and wrap it like this. That's just it. Then here to the same thing, we don't need this cache anymore, this try and cache, we don't need it, so we're going to remove everything. So here we're going to say the async handler like that, and we'll pass it in like this, save. So let's test this before we go for that. I don't have any error. Let's press send. Okay, let's do something wrong. And no category is working. So let's do our start cast errors to see if we can say no resource found. Perfect. Okay, so now let's go. So everything is working fine. So async handler, it's a function, so passing it or wrapping it. So we don't need to do the try and cache anymore. So remove it, try and cache, we don't need it anymore. Make our code look cleaner. Can we see how clean it is? Now update to the same thing. Async handler, it's a function. Then we don't need try and we don't need cache anymore. Make our code look clean. Save. So next thing now, async handler, same, and we're removing the try, right? And we're going to remove the cache as well and put it there. That's it. So now guys, this is perfect. We have done everything we have done for the error handling and we have done for async handler. Okay, so that's it guys. So be sure to hit the like button, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I create awesome content and we are also working on building a YouTube clone. So hit the bell notification if you want to receive new video or new tutorials next week. I create content every Tuesday. Bye guys, see you in the next one.